Hope everyone's doing okay. Let me check the stream, make sure things are working the way I think they're doing. Yes, they seem to be working okay. All right, great. I am here because, as usual, I am given stuff, and then I always want to do stuff and I don't have time, but I'm trying to make time. Awesome. Frederick says he can hear me loud and clear. Awesome. First thing, first rule in the unwritten rule book of streaming: make sure everyone can see what they need to see and hear you. And hopefully you can see me and hear me talk about LokDown, dun, 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 a Triforge expansion to Carbyne Jungle, a book that I looked at in an early one of these a long time ago, or at least it feels like a long time ago. The folks behind Carbyne Jungle asked me, hey, they're coming out with this expansion. I believe it is currently on Kickstarter. I think it has 2 weeks to go. And they said, hey, you looked at the last one. Would you like to look at this one? And I said, sure. Always happy to look, always interested in stuff. So they sent it to me. Now, this is a big book. I don't know if I can get through this in one shot. What I'm going to try to do is really try to drill into the important stuff, get there as soon as possible. So I'm going to, skipping forward probably past some things because I really want to get to, I want to get to the meat of it. I don't want to spend a lot of time in stuff that's, in the grand scheme of things, maybe not super important. I mean, not that anything's not important, but I want to get to the core. I'm going to get right to the main course. So let's... Oh, and as usual with these, I haven't read it. I think I may have looked at the table of contents and things just to get an idea of the length of the book. This is me taking a totally fresh look. Like I always say with these, the concept here is I'm hanging out at the game store and I'm looking to see if I want to buy something, and I'm flipping through the racks, looking at the books. I pick one down, it seems to catch my eye. I flip through it, see if I like it. That's the same kind of concept. I'm looking at this book. Hey, is this something that I could use, that I would like, that would give me inspiration or has interesting rules? So this is LokDown. All right. Oops. So here we have that table of contents. There's a lot going down. Let me see if I can get the full screen just for my eyes. Oh, let's see. I'm trying this doing split. Oh, shoot. If I do split screen, never mind. Okay, I was going to do this view with two. So I get two pages in at once. Just better use of screen real estate. But if I go to full screen to make it a little bit bigger on my laptop, it wants to send it back to single screen. So I'll just go with this and we'll make do. Let's see. Let me just move myself slightly over. I don't know why those little things, they... Oop. Get out there. Okay. So we got a lot going on here. We've got LokDown has begun, which I will probably read at least some of, since I assume this is going to give us the context for what this expansion is going to be talking about. So that's usually pretty important. Then we have species. Well, we have, I guess, after the general stuff, we've got some basics. We've got building a character, player advancement. I will probably skip over those. I'm assuming they're pretty much on par with what was happening with Carbyne Jungle, so you can go and reference that other read-through if you haven't looked at that one, or you don't recall. You need a refresher on that. I definitely want to see the species, societies and society domains. We have archetypes. We're going to have backgrounds. We've got regions of LokDown. Then we have a chapter on gameplay, then skills, economy and equipment, capabilities, or chi abilities, maybe. Yeah, I think that's chi abilities. Even with my glasses, the type's a little bit small, but I don't really fault them. I'm kind of on a zoomed out view with the PDF. My fault. Running the game, which I'm assuming, or running a game, right? I'm assuming that's GM advice. The target list, not sure what that is, but it has its own table of contents back there, so maybe it'll be a. We'll have to see what that is if we get that far. Gives us a starter mission and then some quick starts and extras. All right, so let's see here. This is Lockdown has begun. The Luminous Dawn. When the calamity struck, the Luminous Dawn colony fleet was mid-transit to an uninhabited world, past the edges of Neospine space. Controls failed, life support systems faltered. In short, the 100,000 inhabitants of the escaping fleet were destined to die. Through frantic effort, the engineering crew managed to get basic life support systems online, and the crews and their families went into stasis chambers, hoping to wait out the danger until a rescue could be found. All 4 ships were linked to the controls of Admiral Keanu Locke, commander of the Luminous Dawn. What quickly became clear to Admiral Locke was there would be no rescue. After the calamity, there was not a ship in Empire, or perhaps even the galaxy, who could find them. So while they slept without dreams, Keanu Locke guided the fleet through the void of space on only the most basic of gravitational controls, completely alone and without hope. All right, so there we have something. I'll read the rest, but I did want to insert in here, which I forgot that this is an early edition. I'm sure there's probably more. I'm not sure if the art is final. There probably will be updates to the text. Perhaps, I don't know. I just know this is an early version that was sent to me, so there might be typos, changes, graphics may be altered. The usual blah blah blah. This is basically a beta version of the rules and the text. Okay. Planet Lockdown. When the alarms blared, announcing the end of stasis, the crews and their families awoke to find their vessels crash-landed on a strange alien world. The only message from Admiral Locke, a call for hope, a plea for determination, and a farewell. He placed their ship on the best course he could towards an inhabitable world they would not reach for over 2,000 years. They found Admiral Locke's ancient mummified corpse still at the controls and gave him a burial in the planet he had died getting them to. The world Admiral Locke found was tidally locked, with one sweltering side perpetually facing the sun, and the other in permanent frozen darkness, with one narrow strip circling the planet from pole to pole in perpetual twilight that was inhabitable. The Eventide Steppes. Millennia ago, Admiral Locke had managed to somehow place them inside this narrow, habitable zone on the northern hemisphere. Dubbing the world Lockdown, the people of the Luminous Dawn fleet set about finding a means of surviving their new home. While able to support life in several forms, Lockdown proved to be as hostile a life-sustaining world as any on record. The atmosphere was breathable, if barely. The wildlife was savage, and on par with the bioengineered attack creatures bred for war in the old empire. The native peoples found on Lockdown, while not necessarily hostile, were of little assistance. Nearly impossible to track, and the closest translation they could work out of their name was Damon. Worst of all, a thronging creature, later named Merc Swarms, moved in great gray masses across the Eventide Vale, devouring everything, even the hulls of their colony ships. Without the means of adapting, the survivors of the crash would soon be left perpetually exposed to the harsh environment until they were devoured, one way or another. All right, so pretty cool thus far. What's that? It kind of has a feel of Chronicles of Riddick Crematorium, except it's kind of half crematorium and half the ice planet Riddick was at the very start of the movie. I'm a big Chronicles of Riddick fan. It didn't do well in the theaters. I don't even know if people really remember it much, but really did a lot of excellent world buildings of sort of the Riddick universe. I don't know if there's a name for that. The Riddick Cinematic Universe. The adaptations. Each ship had different specialties, and among their colonists were some of the greatest adaptive scientists in existence. In a desperate attempt to survive Lockdown, the research team set about devising means to adapt their peoples into more viable peoples on this new rock. While most attempts failed, some with brutal outcomes, 4 methods of survival were discovered, allowing the peoples of Luminous Dawn to live, if not unchanged. The quantum geologists of the fleet discovered means of strengthening their own bodies with the native elements of LokDown, creating the Godai. Biogeneticists used DNA samples from the hardy creatures native to LokDown to create the Shastra, hybrids of sapient and beast. Several of the engineers managed to adapt technology traded from the daemons to create the Xenotons, a bionic people. The last team used tissue samples from the daemons themselves to create genetic hybrids known as the Bloodborne. Frederick says, interesting book. Yep. I believe so, though, again, I'm right into it, but it's got a kind of Gamma World, like Chronicles of Riddick meets Gamma World sort of thing. All right, so that's the past. Where we stand now. Able to survive LokDown, but unable to leave, the four peoples of LokDown set about the most arduous part of their task, making this new world into a home. Generations passed which had never seen a star, but the stories of the endless voids filled with long-lost peoples never faded from the hearts and dreams of their souls. So there you are. That is where we are, presumably, on LokDown. The world of LokDown. All right, so again, I'm going to skip as much stuff as I can possibly bear. What is an RPG? All that stuff is great if you're new to things. But, you know, we're all veterans here. And if you are new, please read it. But it's in every book, and I don't want to waste valuable time going over this. Okay, so I'm going to skip the basics, skip building a character. It's great that it's there. I'm going to go right to species. Species represent NPCs or PC's genetic and often cultural heritage. Species bonuses and abilities are very important to low-tier characters, for they greatly define the young character at the start of their career. Most species have their own culture that interact in predictable patterns, and characters often start following those norms, although PCs are often the exceptions to many rules. As the character progresses and gains knowledge, equipment, scars, and life lessons, the bonuses granted by the character species begin to be of less importance. The foundation of who your character is in the universe always remains. The list is organized by the species order of creation. Okay. That's interesting stuff, and I like it because one thing I feel like gets caught up, I'm going to say 5th edition D&D, probably happens to other. People get caught up in their starting in terms of D&D racial abilities. Like people say, well, why isn't the Dragonborn's breath weapon useful from 1 to 20? And that's because after a few levels, your class abilities, your other things should be what you're using. If you're still relying on your dragon breath when you're 18th level, something's probably wrong. It's just not supposed to be the main mode. There's supposed to be nice little things to give you a leg up in the world, but at a certain point, you're supposed to lean on your class abilities, your player abilities, and all that stuff. So they kind of make it plain there, right? You should not be depending on your species abilities once you've got a few levels under your belt. They're good to give you a little bump, a little survivability up front, something to do, but they're not the be-end, end-all of things. So we have a place in the world, what is the role of a species, history of the species, shape and size, lifespan. These are all, I think, fairly self-evident. I'm going to just kind of skip them because I really just want to get into what these species are. They also have subspecies. All right. Xenoton. History. After nearly a decade of attempts, the first breakthrough was made that modified the peoples of the Luminous Dawn to survive on LokDown. As their ships were shredded, researchers traded for the strange compounds created by the daemons. I don't know. I always say daemons when I say the AE like that. I don't know if it's supposed to be demons, but I'm going to keep saying daemons. Which somehow survived the swarms that bore through the ships of the fleet. Without a proper name for the compound, the researchers simply called it demon steel, after an old mythological alloy used in ancient history. While patchwork repairs with this material bought the people time, there was not enough of the material to create an entire civilization. After realizing that the demon steel was partially organic, a team of biologists and engineers experimented on themselves in attempts to bond the material into their DNA. What resulted was a strange combination of alien technology and the original person. The quote-unquote DNA of the alien tech held quote-unquote code on how to adapt the body of its host, forming a bond somewhere between symbiotic and bionic. Part of the researchers' bodies were overwritten with technological adaptations that were planted in the body and grew within. Perplexingly, the demon steel covering was never identical in any two people. While some have reddish metallic substance covering all their skin, others have nearly no visible augmentations and appear much as their ancestors would have previously. Others still have entire limbs which are completely cybernetic, while other portions of their body appear untouched. Future generations were born with adaptive coding of the demon steel already in their bloodstream, with each person slightly different. When it appears that there are some bionic patterns of semblance to parents, there are theories that the demon steel coding is intended to quote-unquote experiment with different possibilities. The shocking visible changes in the Xenotons were startling to all of the survivors of the Luminous Dawn, but their ease of life on the New World spurred new avenues of research among the many scientists of Luminous Dawn and bought time for the other research teams to find alternative means of surviving. Whew. All right, there's a lot to digest there, but the gist of it is that this kind of, I guess, organic, but seems like it's partly organic, but it's also metallic substance that was, I guess, given to them, or they were able to take from the locals, and they were able to get it into their DNA, merge their DNA, and create these hybrids. Pretty cool. I mean, there's stuff in there which I like in particular, that it's, as a player, you'll be able to basically determine how you want it to look on you, right? There's no one thing. It's not like, I forget, so like sometimes they have a particular look to a creature. I'm thinking of those kind of clockwork things in D&D. Why am I forgetting their names? But if people get, bent out of shape, I think in one of the book covers or the book or something, they changed the way one looked a bit, and people got kind of bent out of shape about that. But here, it can surface in different people in different ways. So if somebody wants to have the metal look all over their bodies, great. If they just want to have their eye have something metallic and nothing else, or their pinky finger or something else, or whatever, the inside of their left thigh, that's fine too, right? It's totally up to you. So the player can have fun kind of making it look as cool and different or as subtle, as they want. We have a couple of subspecies here. The Deciber, and I may have to kind of bend over here. The one thing, and I don't know if it's just my eyesight going, or again, I'm looking at this in a kind of zoomed out way, but man, that text is small. All Xenoton usually stand just over 6 feet tall, with women slightly under 6 feet tall. The Deciber are set apart by their more natural appearance. Decibers vary from having one or more limbs which appear robotic, along with portions of their face, to having nearly no visible signs of robotics. All Deciber, though, have heavy robotic aspects to their bodies, including internal organs. Decibers took to painting the metallic aspects of their bodies, with styles ranging from solid colors to graffiti styles to fine artwork. Usually a Deciber's canvas can be determined from their paint job. Oh, sorry, caravan. Oh boy, it's going to be fun when I'm reading some of this text. Usually Deciber's caravan, and we don't know what a caravan is yet, can be determined from their paint job, though I may have skipped over it, so that might be my fault again. Deciber's personalities tend to vary as much as their appearance, with individuality prized above everything else. For most Deciber, the idea of life as part of the pyramids, where everyone as part of a whole is offensive. Okay, so they don't want to live in this pyramid, which I'm guessing maybe is some kind of collective of some sort, or at least organized society. They're all loners, man. They gotta follow their own path. They gotta be free like a bird, man. Like MC Chris. That's an old Adult Swim reference, so I apologize for that. We have another subspecies called the skinless. As the name implied, skinless from head to toe are from head to toe covered in robotics. This is not to say that they are fully made of machine. In fact, skinless on average have no higher percent of xenomachine components than a Discyber, but just have a higher proportion of Demon Steel robotics on the outside. Proud of their appearance, bleh. Skinless do not paint their natural skin tones as the Discybers do, although in recent generations etching has become popular among many skinless, who take to etching intricate symbols into their Demon Steel coverings. The skinless are incredibly durable and enjoy risk-taking. Few skinless ever are willing to settle in the safety of the pyramids and domes, preferring the bustle of either the airships or the caravans. Okay, so I guess the caravans, and then we also have airships, are obviously outside, floating around or traveling around. And then clearly there are, I guess, settled cities, towns, I guess, pyramids and domes, right? What I would imagine would be towns and cities. I don't know if there's a size thing, with pyramids are larger and domes are smaller, or if there's just different configurations. We do have some, so we do want to get in the nitty gritty of what the cyber have. All right, I gotta get in here. So the cybers, they get some +2 to your int. You know, they call it intellect here, but you know, whatever. Int +2 to endurance, aka constitution. They got some abilities here. Plug and play. One device or weapon that does not require a tripod may be built into your body's machine components. This can be switched out over a complete rest. All right, that's cool. I kind of like that. So you can, you know, you got a machine gun or maybe a submachine gun, since you could argue a machine gun might need a tripod. Take that submachine gun and make it part of you, and then swap it out with a knife if you want to later on. Solar charge. If you are touched by sunlight for at least 2 hours a day, you do not need to eat and can go without water for 2 days without any ill effects. Also cool. And then, let's see, Milestone 1, Hacked Mind. Choose any one subskill you trained in it, and you always have advantage when using that subskill. Over a complete rest, you could change the skill. Milestone 2, Machine in the Ghost. Choose one Soul Ward or Chi attack. You gain +2 damage whenever you use it. Okay. And then, let's see, the third one is Predictive Algorithm. You or an ally can reroll any one die. You must decide to reroll before the outcome of the roll is declared. This reroll cannot be a critical. Recharges on a complete rest. Okay, so if you use the reroll, just can't be a crit. And then there's a Xenoton attack option. On hit, make a secondary attack versus their stamina. Deal int recurring damage, but take half the damage each time. This damage is unavoidable. All right. A little bit of a tactic there, right? You can do this recurring damage, but you're going to take half as much as they took. And then the skinless have a couple of things. They've also got the plug and play. They've got the solar charge. They have hardened body. Unarmored, they get some extra defense. And they have 3 plating. When buying armor, you could choose to upgrade your components instead and have the armor built into your body. Wow, that seems super powerful to me. But seems awfully nice when you could say, you know, get the... I don't know, whatever the sci-fi equivalent to plate mail is, and just have them build it in. They also have Ghosts in the Machine. You learn one form for free from any species. That sounds good. They also have Protective Algorithm, and they have the same Xenoton attack option. So it looks like all the Xenotons maybe will have that attack option. All right. So we get some more here. Let's get on. I'm not going to go through the forms and attacks. Just suffice to say, there's a bunch. The Godai. In the search for means of surviving, the terraformers and geologists of Luminous Dawn sought to use their own specialties to find a means of survival. While most groups sought a means of adapting themselves, The Godai desired a greater understanding of the unique environment they found themselves in. The world of LokDown proved unique in all their research and experience. From the air to the soil to the mineral content, the entire planet seemed to possess few similarities to the worlds that they had previously visited or created. Their new home appeared to show qualities of artificial manipulation for a purpose and using methods beyond the crew's ken. As the survivors adapted their technology to work with their new surroundings, it became evident that their previous techniques at adapting worlds would have to change for survival to be possible. The earliest efforts at terraforming were moderately successful, allowing the people of Luminous Dawn to create enough food to survive the early years, but not to survive the harshness of the environment. Only the generosity of the mysterious natives, the daemons, kept starvation and disease in check during that early time. While the passengers were able to create pockets through energy shields where plants could survive, they could not adapt the shields to provide breathable air for people or help with attempts at domestication. Even worse, the devouring swarms that randomly struck their cities brutally set back progress in their efforts. After the first hybridizations occurred with the Xenoton, the Godai worked to adapt their abilities at terraforming and the unique nature of the elements of LokDown to the task of creating a means of surviving on the planet. They found a solution by forming a bond between themselves and the world itself. The Godai had their first success with Tsushi, bonding their bodies with primal connection to the metallic elements of LokDown. The subjects of the experiments found themselves able to connect with the world itself. While previously the passengers that would become the Godai had hypothesized on the existence of world souls, of spirits existing within the natural world, after the bonding, the Godai were able to feel this connection, this bond between the spirits of the world. More experiments were conducted, bonding the peoples with different elements with varying degrees of success. Over time, the Godai grew able to communicate with what they had named the world souls and reshaped portions of the world, flora, fauna, and native environments to be friendly to the descendants of the Luminous Dawn. Excuse me. All right. So these guys were able to kind of go, I feel like Avatar. They were able to find these world souls, they call it, and sort of connect with them on an intimate level and use this to mold themselves and other parts of the world to be more copacetic to the Luminous Dawn folk. All right. So the first subspecies we have here are the Ka. While many people outside of Godai society often see Ka as polar opposites of the Tsuchi, those closest to them realize they are different sides of the same coin. Both have similar abilities to focus and a deep, meaningful search in their lives to connect with others and the world itself. The Ka do so through a continuous search. Very outgoing, the Ka are known to be passionate about nearly every aspect of their lives. Ka are also determined tacticians, loving to face challenges and seeking to master difficult situations. Bonded with strange fires that burn perpetually lightward of the eventide steppes, the Ka tend to be constantly in motion and quick to decide. Ka tend to be short, averaging around 5 feet tall for both men and women. Their skin tone varies widely, from pale whites to dark browns that appear ebony. Regardless of the skin color, brilliant veins of color cover their bodies like marble in bright red, yellow, or oranges. All right. So there we have the Ka. And then we also have the Tsuchi. The Tsuchi, bonded with metallic elements of the world, tend to have a sheen to their skin, with colors ranging from glossy black to dull silver, with some tones venturing to deep bronzes and vibrant golds. The Tsuchi's eyes are nearly always a single solitary color. Tsuchi are very stable people, tending to take the long view towards most situations. They are very deliberate in both choices and actions. Tsuchi patience is legendary, as is their ability to study a topic endlessly. Oh boy. Most Tsuchi find peace through studied principles and live a reflective life. This does not mean that Tsuchis avoid adventure, but that when they do seek to venture out of their homes, they do so with the same purposeful focus they approach all things with. So I get kind of a monkish or a Asian monkish kind of vibe from them, like a Buddhist monk. Very meditative and contemplative. That name is tough for me. I hope I'm not butchering it too much. Tsuchi. Say that. I'll need to say that 10 times. 10 times a night I will get my vocal chops in order. Okay, so let's look at some of their abilities here. The Godai have a soul bond. They gain advantage on casting any soul words that involve the elements. I'm guessing soul words are like spells, basically, or at least a type of spell. They have elemental defiance. It looks like it's a response action, which I'm guessing is like a reaction. One attack against you is weakened, and it looks like that's kind of a short rest style ability. They have a few other abilities here. Is milestones. The Book of Fire. Benefits from advantage are increased by 1. Burning Attitude. You can disengage 20 feet passing through anything not airtight. That's kind of cool. That means, I guess, that you can just slip. So not airtight would mean just even if there's a crack in the door, boom, you're through it. So that's nice for escaping. Always good to have escape options. And they've got the Godai attack option, which is on a hit, they can change locations with your target. Oh, so you do the old switcheroo. And then the Tsuchi, they've got, they also have Elemental Defiance. They have the Book of the Earth. They gain +1 to attacks against one target or +1 damage against multiple targets. Okay. And then Invincible Knowledge. It's a support style action. When you attack an opponent, you can make the ground at their feet difficult terrain up to 20 feet in any direction through the next turn. You ignore the difficult terrain that you create. That's nice for kind of trying to stick somebody somewhere, making it more difficult for them to get away. And it doesn't affect you, though. It will affect other people in your group. It doesn't say for allies, just says for you. So use with care, but also useful. And now we have the Shastra. Okay. Let's see here. Part of the challenge of surviving after the Luminous Dawn colony fleet crash-landed on LokDown was the loss of digital knowledge. Somehow the calamitous event wiped out all digital data, forcing the technicians to start from scratch, having to create their own languages from scratch to even begin the process of creating workable programs. While many of the scientists on LokDown were advanced in their fields, without the computer algorithms used in their research, they were craftsmen deprived of their tools. This led to a different approach for developing computer languages, with the geneticists teaming with the technicians of the fleet. Using concepts of social engineering, genetic development, along with computer analytics, developed not only a new approach towards computer programming, but also a new approach to artificial intelligence that became widely embraced on LokDown. As a whole, AI was outlawed by their former civilization, as it basically amounted to slavery to take a sentient consciousness and force it to perform certain actions, while many organizations employed Shastraic intelligence, an advanced form of interactive user interface that is incapable of sentience. The pressures upon those on LokDown, along with the experimental nature of their computer language, did not allow for morality. The desperation felt by the survivors of the colony fleet compelled them to employ every tool at their disposal, and the most potent weapon in their arsenal was the artificial intelligence they brought to life. The vocal minority were shouted down and silenced by the stunning successes. So a little kind of Dune vibe there with the computers. or lack thereof. The first successful bonding occurred with the research team that led to the Xenotons. When the bioengineers received the data from this melding, the AI determined there were other successful bondings which could occur, allowing for different aspects of survival as well as different aptitudes for the people of LokDown. Is that aptitudes? I'm guessing it is. The most shocking aspect of this discovery was that no survivors would be left unchanged. To survive on their new world would require drastic shifts in their physical bodies, but the AI determined several possible courses. Once they restored their toolset for genetic engineering, the biologists set about determining what organic code would best help them to survive in their new world, and the most direct model for survival came from the creatures who already thrived upon LokDown. While the organisms were unique, their resemblance to species already known to the people of the Luminous Dawn led to obvious comparisons of dragon, bear, boar, fox, lion, and others. Unleashing the AI upon the genetic information of these creatures allowed people to choose one of several adaptations that would allow them to survive upon the harsh environment of their new home, so giving birth to the Shastra. All right. So we've got some stuff about AI in there, which is interesting. It seems, I guess I wonder at the placement here, because I would have thought the AI might have been something that was more general, but here they put a lot of that background in there. But it's cool. It's kind of a Dune vibe. But the bottom line here is there are multiple species that, though unique, clearly resemble Earth species, and that these subspecies are going to be based on that, which is kind of the idea of, hey, you want your dragonborn, you want your fox person, you want some other things, like here they are, because there's a bunch of these species, and no, it's not actually a dragon, but it looks close enough to what we believe is a dragon to pass for a dragon. Or we're going to call it a dragon. Looks like a dragon, talks like a dragon, might as well be a dragon. So we have the subspecies 1, Kitsune, the fox. While there were and still are many different adaptations that were made to native animals, the two most common adaptations were the Ryujin and the Kitsune. The Kitsune were formed from the genetic material of a native fox-like creature. The native fox stands nearly 4 feet tall at the shoulder and is an exceptional hunter. Also, incredibly brazen, the creature would be known to walk straight into villages and occasionally sit for hours just watching the people. There are no known events of a fox attacking a person, although there have been many rumors and stories. So just a huge fox, a fox the size of a Great Dane or even larger. The Kitsune tend to have a wild and playful streak in their dealings and enjoy games of strategy and wordplay. They are natural acrobats with limber bodies and great natural awareness of their surroundings. A startling realization came when the Kitsune showed the ability to change the appearance of their skin, appearing like members of other species or like a regular human for a time. As this genetic trait seemed to come from the native foxes, that led to even more stories of the brazen creatures. Kitsune also have an affinity for spirit songs, often taking to the musical nature of the magic inherently. So we got a few things in there. They can shapeshift, or at least change their appearance for a limited time, and they're naturally gifted with some sort of magique. And now the other subspecies, the Ryujin, aka dragon. The native species of dragon were incredibly strong animals which dwelt in the rivers and lakes found along the Eventide. With long serpentine bodies and 6 legs, the creatures were terrifying predators, and the early inhabitants of LokDown quickly learned caution near the waterways. Those bonded with the dragon tend to have long-limbed frames and are very flexible, often standing between 7 and 8 feet tall. While some have few signs outside of their lanky bodies of their heritage, some Ryujin appear with scales ranging in hues from green to white to red, complete with claws and a facial structure that appears much like the river dragon they were bonded with. Ryujins are energetic, never wanting to stay in one place. They are constantly moving towards a goal and often have an obsessive nature over interests. So very classically dragon-like in that regard. I mean, not so much the hurrying, but the obsessive nature. At the same time, Ryujin are very emotional people, taking comments to heart and sometimes with a volatile temper. Many Ryujin prefer time in isolation, focusing on their fixations rather than dealing with the volatile ranges of emotions that come from groups of people. While a Ryujin can be difficult to be around at times, that does not mean that they do not fare well. Some of the strongest leaders in the Shastra pyramids have been Ryujin. They often have an inspiring presence, and their dedication to their interests leads them to excel in chosen fields. So a few more dragonish qualities. Right? They like to be alone. They have sort of a presence. In this case, they don't mention fear, but more inspiration. We've got a couple of, let's see some abilities here. They both share the Shastra instinct. Shastras have advantage on awareness checks, and they gain +2 to initiatives. All right, so they're quick draw McGraws. They also both have body awareness. They can ignore difficult terrain, and it requires 3 attackers to flank them in combat. That's cool. Because they're so lithe, they're easily twist around, so 2 people aren't enough. You gotta have 3. Let's see, the Kitsune have sly cunning. They have advantage on stealth and convince, which I'm guessing is like persuasion checks. And they also have, what is that called? Inari's voice. They're trained in 1 alpha tier spirit song, which we don't know what it is yet, but some kind of maybe more bard-like magic with the song. And they have another one called Faceless. A kitsune can change its appearance to look like a generic humanoid of a different species. The effect reverts if they fall unconscious, or choose to return to their normal appearance. They can get it back on a full rest, which I'm guessing, or they call it complete rest, which I'm guessing is a long rest. So once a day, you can transform. But it seems like from that, you can stay transformed as long as you like, up until that long rest. And they have the Shastra attack option. Let's see. If you hit something through your next turn, the target cannot disengage. So it's helpful if you want them to stick around. They can't do it if you don't want them to. All right. Now, the Ryujin. Let's see. I'm just going to go through their specific ones, or their unique abilities. They have Draconic Presence. They just have advantage on presence and focus checks. Okay. I'm not sure what a presence and focus check is, but I'm guessing that's good. Channeled Obsession, and they get some bonuses to a couple skills. Oh, they got, let's see, this third one, Ryujin's Calm. Kind of as a support style action. You can use a focus check to remove any condition, assuming you can use a support action. Okay. So they basically can have bonuses to getting rid of some kind of negative condition, whatever that may be. All right. Now we have the Bloodborne. During the first decade, the struggle to survive on LokDown was desperate. One of the first great feats accomplished was the repurposing of the engines of the colony ships into the stratostats, ships that used anti-graviton fields and simple thrusters to rise above the lower atmosphere. In the stratostat, energy harvesting from the collision of the hot and cold fronts of the 2 halves of the planet made for giant windfalls for the survivors of Luminous Dawn. So much so that without the airships, the surface dwellers would not have survived. As an added benefit was that the stratostats sailed above the devouring swarms that wrecked so much of the surface technology. For a time, a major theory for the survival of the people involved building enough of the stratostats to elevate all of the peoples into the air above the difficulties of the surface. But with time constraints and lack of materials, there were no means of allowing for large-scale survival above the clouds. Using the stratostat to explore, the nature of the world was truly first understood from top down. The planet did not rotate on its axis, but was tightly locked in place. From the skies, one could see the sun, the blaring light reflected off the scorched earth of the region they titled Calderax, and the unending black of Hypobore. The vantage points also allowed for the prediction of wind patterns and swarm migrations, which bought precious months and years for the people of LokDown. That's a cool idea, right? They're setting these ships up. They're able to harvest energy. They're able to finally do some surveying and stuff, but they don't have enough equipment to get everybody up there. But now they've got this kind of a cool, I don't even know if really transportation. Obviously, they could transport things, but really more about just observation and study and harvesting energy. I feel like there's a lot of animes that had stuff with kind of skybound airships and things like that. I can't remember the names, but there were a couple of ones I thought were pretty cool, and I just get that, just get a little bit of that vibe from this. Let's see, where was I? After the first adaptations were made for long-term survival on LokDown, resulting in the Xenoton, the airships kept searching for a means of retaining their original genetics. Even after adaptations were made, resulting in the Godai and the Shastra, the airships continued their circling and research. All the while, the strain grew on the people remaining unbonded. Most of the old genetic lines moved up in the skies, seeking to lessen the strain received from surviving on LokDown. Even in the skies, though, the atmosphere caused cellular damage, and what was available for food was difficult to process. Just set a cushion back there. Eventually, biological samples taken from the strange people named the Daemons proved promising for being able to make only minor changes to the genetic structure while still allowing for survival, serving as a xenogenic patch as opposed to the drastic changes of the other factions. The first attempts proved successful with no observable changes to features and behavior, and within a few years, nearly all the remaining people were treated, becoming the people known as the Bloodborne. It was several generations before the first signs of their new genetic heritage became visible. Skin tones darkened to shades of red and black. Features sharpened, growing more angular. Within a century, the skin colors varied through shades of crimson, cobalt, violet, and black. I think they mean violet. Violet and black, with some developing horns or spikes. Eventually, the appearance of the Bloodborne became the most varied of the survivors of Luminous Dawn. And the picture here, fellow, looks awfully orcish. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We got a couple of subspecies, the Oni and the Tengu. I mean, I think we can catch on here that there's a very Asian vibe to a lot of the names and the inspirations for these things so far. Let me just give my glasses a wipe. Let's see, how am I doing on other things? All right, things look good. I'm in the green, so says OBS. All right. First, the Oni. Oni are the largest of the Bloodborne, often standing over 7 feet tall with broad builds. The Oni are a massive people with 12 fingers and toes and a large round face. The Oni have an incredibly intimidating appearance. Their skin modeling tends to lean towards blues, dark greens, and reds. Oni nearly always have at least one horn and sometimes many more, with one prominent Oni who took the name Talon having lines of horns from the back of each rib, leading the master armorer Sen to make it his life's work to build a perfect suit of armor for the warrior. Despite their fearsome appearance, Oni tend to be excellent listeners and quite protective friends. Most have exuberant personalities around people they feel comfortable with and border on jolly on good days. Onis often enjoy a good fight and enjoy the competitive nature of airships. Onis do tend to hold a grudge. That's a little typo there. Let's see. And crossing one is often a lifelong affair. Kind of dwarvish, a little bit. Kind of, I don't know, a little bit of that dwarvish sort of jolliness, but right, holding a grudge. And then there's the Tengu. The Tengu are shorter, between 5'3" and 5'9", with sharp, angular features, often with a longer, almost beak-like nose. Their modeling skin tends towards blacks, reds, and purples, and Tengu tend to grow spikes along their scalp, which will lie down just like hair, but can stand like porcupine quills when confronted. Occasionally, Tengu are born with hair that more of Occasionally, Tengu are born with hair that more resembles tentacles and spikes. That's another typo, I guess. Tengu are natural jumpers, able to leap upwards of 20 feet in the air, and often enjoy martial arts that involve movement. Tengu also have a natural affinity with aspects of magic that involve the mind. Many people find the presence of a Tengu unsettling, although many Tengu insist that it is done intentionally by the Tengu to people they find disrespectful. Tengu enjoy the heights of the airships, but many do choose to live on the surface. When on LokDown, many tend to still search for the heights, preferring caravans that frequent mountains or the higher levels of the pyramids. All right, I think these are the final major species, I think. So let's see what their main abilities are. Quills and horns. This is for the Oni. Let's see if it's a sort of a reaction when something attempts to grapple you. You make an attack roll and you can deal damage because you've got quills and horns. Let's see, there's another one called the Heart Striker. You get a bonus to convince checks that use intimidation. So basically, you get a bonus to intimidation checks. Let's see, and enemies have a disadvantage on morale checks against you, which is cool. Brutal Strike, add damage to one attack. Did you get that? I'm guessing every short rest you can recharge that one. Here you get another sort of reaction type action. Let's see, if an adjacent ally takes damage, you can take a d10 of that damage instead. But once you take it, you can't mitigate it. And then another one, Thickest Hide. You can add 5 to all your defenses through the next turn. It's cool, basically like a 1 turn long defensive boost. And as you have an attack option that forces your target to make a morale check, which they're disadvantaged against you. So good and good. And then if you're the Tengu, you also get the Heart Strike, you also get Quills and Horns. But you get one called Lofty Perch. When you have high ground, Highlander. Oh, that was holy ground, but you get the point. Or if you ambush from above, you get a greater advantage. Not sure what that is, but I'm guessing it's advantage, but better. Blended Covering, which is a reaction. Someone's not hiding well, roll a d8, subtract that from your stealth check, and add it to an ally's check. Okay, that's cool. So you can basically cover up for someone else not doing well hiding, which would do wonders in many games. When you have whoever it is in the heavy armor just kind of clinking around, you could try to cover them up. And then you also have Savage Finish. You could roll damage twice on your next attack, keep the higher roll. So you basically get advantage on your next damage, the damage of your next attack. So those are the Bloodborne. Alright, I'm not going to read through the languages. It's cool they have them. No disrespect to the languages, but I'm just trying to... It's merely so I can move on to other things. So here we get to societies and society domains. We've got pyramids. That I guess the Shastra build. And I don't know if they run them, but they are the largest settlements on the steppes. There are only 5 though, so 5 of them. Step-based construction are capable of housing between thousands to millions. Okay. I'm gonna maybe be brief here a little bit. I guess you can do, if it's cool, you can kind of do some training there, or is that, I'm not sure. So you could do, let's see, there's some box text about these pyramids. A skill training, martial block, or 2 sub-skills. I guess these are kind of trainings you can undertake in the pyramids. Those are cool. Okay, so the pyramids are the Shastra built. The domes are built by the Godai. And then you have caravans. Oh, excuse me. That are, I guess, that the Xenoton. Either they run them, or they created them, or they just favor them. And here there's an image here that looks like a lot of kind of souped up dune buggy type things. Or maybe ATVs. I don't know. Are they 4-wheelers? Just a bunch of them zooming along. And there we have the airships. Very cool. Very like a cross between Star Trek and Farscape. Star Trek, just because I get that very curved front, just gives me a vibe of the disc. And even the fact that it's got sort of that vertical look that a lot of the starships have, but then it also has a very organic look that reminds me of Moya and the bioships in Farscape. Here we have some archetypes. I'm just going to read through them quickly and not going to get into the details. Not because the details aren't cool, but just because I'm trying to get through a lot. And I'm already coming on an hour, and I'm not sure how much longer I can go. It is a school night after all, but wherever I end up stopping, I will try to pick it up tomorrow. But we've got a Budo warrior, we've got a gunslinger, a shapeshifter, a samurai, a healer, a shinobi, a summoner, and a sorcerer. So we're definitely keeping with the Asian vibes here, I guess specifically Japanese. Ooh, that's a cool picture. Or maybe these are your classes. I guess archetypes are their version of classes. I'm just going to really be brief here. It looks like these, I mean, if that picture is anything, right, that they've got some maybe magic and kind of combat. Some people go to battle. Others are battle incarnate. Some wield weapons of power. Others are weapons themselves. The Budo warrior is the embodiment of self-mastery. Each aspect of their body is a perfected instrument of destruction, focused, refined, and mastered. So there you go. And they can channel energy. Cool. We got the gunslinger. I don't feel like I need to read through the gunslinger. I think we all kind of understand what a gunslinger does. I mean, it's there in the name. It slings guns at people. Healer, the picture kind of looks like a witch, but that's cool. Very, yeah. Final Fantasy Tactics looking sort of witch. Samurai, right? We kind of have an idea of what the samurai is. I'm sure it's got its own touches, but shapeshifter, that guy looks like the Thing. The picture is wearing sort of, got his workout pants. He's all kind of torn up and no shirt and just super bulky. But clearly he at least works his leg days. Releasing a bestial roar, she fell to her knees. At first, you might assume weakness, but then you see her body shift and change, the muscles realigning, the bones elongating. Her eyes fill with rage, and for the life of you, you cannot understand why you aren't running. Yep, that's a nice evocative piece of imagery. So I get kind of a barbarian vibe out of that, right? But It's got a more of a Hulk, which actually that kind of does look like the Hulk too, with the shorts. I mean, you can't tell if they're shorts or long pants, but basically the ripped shorts on the bottom and the super muscular. Yep, definitely kind of hulkish. Shinobi. Kind of get that. We have a sorcerer and a summoner. And then we got some of the spells for the summoner. Oh, excuse me. All right, so we got some backgrounds here. I like backgrounds, but I'm not going to go through them all. Oh, yeah, that's a huge table. Let's see, these are fighting backgrounds, combat and fighting styles, then attack option backgrounds, health backgrounds, equipment backgrounds, financial backgrounds. Needless to say, all the backgrounds you need are here at the Background Emporium. 2 or more backgrounds, get one at 33% off. Yeah, there's a lot here. Great. I love tables, and here I'm getting all the tables I could ever want for backgrounds. But like I said, just for brevity's sake, I'm going to not read all of these. Just know that you're going to get your money's worth in tables for these backgrounds. All right, so now the regions of LokDown. By the way, can I just say I really like the name Eventide Steps? I mean, really like it. It is awesome. I'm sometimes critical of names. I just find that with names I create myself, and definitely names that other people create, some of them just don't. Either they're too, I don't know, I feel like sometimes they're too derivative, or they're just kind of nonsensical, or they don't roll off the tongue in a way that makes it feel like you can say them well. And then you get something like this where they just seem to just give you an image. They seem kind of beautiful. Eventide Steps is up there on names in my book. So we got the Eventide Steps, which is that twilight between the area that's between the burning inferno side and the black frozen side. I wonder if I should. I'm wondering because I'm just. It's been a long day. I'm just tiring. Maybe I should stop here. Should I? Should I not? Because I kind of don't want to just. I don't want to rush through too much. All right, so I'm going to move past the regions. I'm glad they're here. It's great for world building. It's great for giving everybody context. As you're creating your characters, you can read the stuff and kind of get a sense of everything. But I'm going to skip it for now. I just want to see what's next. Maybe I'll finish and just close it down while I'm ahead. So I might come back to it. I guess I got gameplay. All right. I guess I'm going to close it down here. I'm going to end it while I'm still got good energy and I'm not just super bogged down. I will come back to this. I'm going to plan it for tomorrow at about the same time. So 8:30-ish p.m. Eastern, I will try to have this back up here and finish it off. So we'll call this part 1 of the read-through of LokDown. What do I think so far? I like it a lot. I liked the Carbyne Jungle. I thought it had a lot of great things to offer and a lot of flexibility for playing all kinds of different sci-fi games. What I feel like they've done here, right, is they've drilled down into a particular, obviously, geographical area, which is this one planet, and really one region of this planet, though maybe they'll talk about adventuring, if it's possible to adventure on this, outside this Eventide Steps. And now you're in the situation where it's sort of like a mini setting within the larger setting. So you have this whole empire, all this stuff, but these folks got blown off way out, and so now you're in this little corner over here, and here's what everything's going on over there. Here's their specific situation, their specific adaptations, and it'll be interesting to read about what kind of adventures or what kind of things are really going on here. But I like that a lot. It's something that obviously when you have a universe to play with, or if we're going to go back to fantasy in terms of where you have the multiverse and all kinds of dimensions to play with, that you can set up these kinds of games. And this gives me kind of a sort of a Gamma World vibe, just in the way that you kind of had a fall and now you're trying to rebuild things back up. Also, a little bit of that Shadowrun vibe, just in terms of these fantasy kind of races that are reawakening, but in our case, it's done via science and technology and not through just mystical awakenings, but it's kind of there. I'm down with the Asian vibe to it. It's a fine line. I'm not of Asian descent. I think according to 23andMe, I have 1% Asian, so I can't speak on it in terms of anything other than it's a flavor that I've appreciated in games. I think nowadays there's that kind of fine line between having an homage and being inspirational versus the cultural appropriation. You'll just have to decide as a reader where you think that lies. I don't feel like I can say, but just in terms of things that I think are cool, I think they're cool. But that's about all I can speak to on that. But I do like what they're doing. I don't really know enough about other things to be able to say. And I don't know anything about the team. They're kind of internet friends of mine, but I don't know them. So I don't know if they are of Asian descent or something where they feel more ownership of it, or if they're just like me and they just paying homage to it because they really appreciate the lore. But it's all very cool so far, and I look forward to getting more of that going. So just for now, consider it's the end of part 1. Part 2, TBD, hopefully tomorrow if you're watching this now. Otherwise, you'll just see it pop up on YouTube when it pops up. But other than that, have a great night. Talk to you later. Game on.